Recently, 5 Washington insiders, White House insiders, spoke to Axios about Donald Trump's plans in regard to the opioid epidemic. And he apparently is looking to people like Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines as an example of drug policy that's right. Which means he is in favor of possibly executing drug traffickers. Let me give you the details. According to the Axios piece, one of the sources said he, meaning Trump, often jokes about killing drug dealers. He'll say, you know, the Chinese and Filipinos don't have a drug problem, they just kill them.
So it's not, can I just say, it's not an oblique reference to Duterte or the Filipinos or the Chinese government. It's a direct reference, like, no, they don't have a drug because they kill the drug dealers. I'd like to kill them. Okay.
He says, when I asked the Prime Minister of Singapore, do they have a drug problem? The Prime Minister replies, no, death penalty.
There's no way that he said that exact sentence. No, death penalty. That's the kind of thing Trump would say, sad baby.
He's an ancient idiot. Like that's something that somebody said in like the year 1806.
Yeah.
And also the idea that conservatives believe in small government, have a principled belief in small government. He's talking about killing people for slightly tweaking their consciousness with a substance.
Right, and look, I want to be clear and fair. He's specifically talking about drug traffickers, right? So the people who are selling these opioids that are killing 64,000 Americans in 2016 alone, right?
Oh my God, they're gonna execute the CEO of Purdue Pharma?
That's exactly what I was gonna say, right? Or the head of Budweiser. That's a substance.
It shows a fundamental lack of understanding over this issue and why this issue came about in the first place. It's because of the pharmaceutical companies. Now, campaign Trump was very aggressive in saying that he would go after the pharmaceutical companies, not even for the opioid crisis, but for drug prices. But he hasn't done that at all. Whenever he talks about the opioid crisis, it's all talk. He never backs it up with real funding, and he never talks about going after the pharmaceutical companies. Is he gonna go after those pill mills in the state of Florida and West Virginia that were pumping out painkillers to people who were addicted to them? Probably not. But he's having a discussion about doing executions of these drug dealers. The drug dealers are not the problem. The drug traffickers are not the problem. Pharmaceutical companies are the problem. The fact that people who are desperately seeking an escape from their economic situation is the problem. I mean, there are all sorts of issues that he could focus on, but instead he looks at, these dictators in other countries and their terrible, terrible ideas. He's like, you know what? Sounds like a good idea. Let me try that out.
And by the way, Duterte, it can accurately be described what he's doing as a genocide.
Yeah.
And Duterte's not just targeting traffickers, not that that'd be okay in the first place, because that's not, but he's also targeting drug users. And he's given the green light to his officers and said, yeah, go out there. There are literal quotes of him saying, I want their families to do it, but I don't think they have the heart. So let's have the police officers kill them. I mean, this is somebody who you're gonna
model yourself after?
Yeah, I mean, this is like Saudi Arabia too. Like, okay, they kill people for selling drugs and doing drugs. Is that who we want to be like?
So in the Philippines, Duterte doesn't just talk about going after people selling fentanyl. It's also marijuana. And so where does it end? And Trump is not just limiting it to fentanyl. The Axios article happened to talk a lot about fentanyl because fentanyl is particularly deadly. By the way, do not do fentanyl. Anyone who tells you, hey, you want to try some fentanyl? It's like saying, would you like to try some suicide?
But it never works out that way, Cenk. The way that it works out is they get hooked on prescription painkillers. And then as soon as they can't get their hands on those painkillers because of the FDA, tightening up some regulations, they go to heroin. And then fentanyl. That's the way it works. And so the heart of the problem is the overprescription of the drug. Now, that's not to take away from the people who actually desperately do need that prescription, but it was being overprescribed and abused. That was the heart of the problem, and that was pushed by the pharmaceutical industry.
And by the way, the solution to that, the FDA is now starting to crack down on. So there's this plant called kratom, and it helps so many people who are addicted to pain pills. It helps people with PTSD and depression and anxiety. It's used for a million different things. People have had overwhelming success. And of course, now the FDA is talking about how, oh, well, we think it's dangerous and maybe you can get addicted to it even though you really can't get addicted to it. And here's some BS cases of people who maybe kind of got hurt on it even though they didn't. Anybody who they accused of overdosing on it, they ran tests, and apparently those people were on 4, 5, 6 different drugs. So they're cracking down on the one thing that could help people because they're doing the work of Big Pharma, because they don't want that as competition.
You know why? Because there's one other group that's addicted in this country, and it's our politicians. They're addicted to the lobbyist money. And pharmaceutical companies are the #1 donors to politicians. So they're never gonna go after the main problem. And by the way, look, think about it. A smart solution, if you have a family member who's affected by opioids and you're scared to death, they might go on fentanyl, or a lot of them die without fentanyl, right? The smart solution would be, how did this start? How can we end it? How can we treat it? How can we make sure it doesn't happen to any other family, right? The dumb solution is, let's just execute them. Let's execute them. Who are you executing?
Such an idiot.
Like, most of the deaths, by the way, are not from fentanyl. They're not even from heroin. Most of the deaths are from the actual legal prescription drugs. They get abused so much that people die from them. So the drug dealers in that case are literally the CEOs of the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, we joke, but it's not a joke. That is the #1 killer of people who are addicted to drugs, are from legal opioids. So are we going to execute those people? No, you're gonna find some people in the street that you don't like, and you're gonna execute those guys. And is it gonna address the problem? Of course not. You just watched the video by the Young Turks, home of the revolution. If you'd like to get a lot more than that, get the full show by becoming a member. TYTnetwork.com/join.